by the way, if you're watching this, drop a comment or two. Why not? We'll interact. No trolling if you can.
Want me do my two-step.
My name's Matt Crowhurst. This is the Crowfro Show. This guy right here is...
I am Jeff Rowe Perrett. Jeffrey Frederick Perrett.
Okay, let's start the show, Jeffrey. We
Let's do it.
are Crowfro Show numero... I haven't got a clue. It doesn't matter.
6.
We've done lots.
6. I don't know why I did that.
6. And we've got something a little bit different that is right out of our realms of knowledge. That includes quite a lot, to be honest with you, doesn't it? Yeah,
to be fair, most shows are like that.
Let's just quick recap. We had an amazing show with Ricky Carmichael. By the time you watch this, we will have had a show out with Ed Lee.
So I've completely forgot about the Ed Lee one. That's obviously
that's still to come.
Last night's VE celebrations have just wiped my mind. So this is actually episode 7. Yeah.
It's episode 7. And we have got this young lady who for the first time came into contact with from a distance through CBBC's Catie's Amazing Machines. I told you about this, right?
Yes, you did.
Yes, who my son's massive fans of, and then I bumped into her at Motorcycle Live, where she was hovering on the Harley stand, and obviously I'm a bike rider, so I hang out with other people that ride bikes, and met her there. Very excited, and she is one of our foremost female motorsports athletes.
Yeah, let's be honest, rally driving is just exciting in its own right.
And now we have got one of Britain's youngest and brightest sporting stars in the action sports, in the motorsports world. And thankfully, we have a lady on the show finally. Okay, so young Catie Munnings, in you come. 3, 2, 1. Hey!
There she is. Hi, Catie. I'm Jeff, by the way.
Nice to meet you. I'm Catie.
And nice to meet you. Look, out in the sunshine. Why aren't we at... This was your idea, do all the stupid indoor setup, and then...
Our set looked good up until there was sunshine outside and Catie on the other end of the screen.
That looks better. The problem is I've got plumbing going on in the house. So
got a bit of plumbing going on in the house. Look at me, he spat his tea out already. Brilliant. Got a bit of plumbing going on in the house. So
that's good. That's good. Well, at least the plumber's working.
Yeah, well, I think it's actually my dad, so God knows what's going to happen.
Okay.
Oh, does he like to tinker, your dad?
He does. He
Excellent.
likes to potter. We've had our washing machine fixed with quad bike parts before, so I don't hold out much hope.
What I'd like to see now, I'm not sure what the room is behind you, but your dad come up to the window in the background with like a load of water going everywhere.
Yeah, it's just him trying to push the pipes down in a cartoon.
Yeah, like
he's plumbing in the room above that, so I'm kind of...
You could get soaked. Oh, that would be absolute gold. Catie Munnings, thank you so much for taking time out in what's seemingly still quite a very busy schedule for you.
Yeah, it has been busy actually. More like busier than I expected it to be. This time of year is like completely normally flat out. We're normally traveling all over the place and doing loads of different events. So we haven't got that side of it. We haven't got the preparation and that kind of thing. But it's more like the anticipation, and nobody really knows what they're doing. Sponsors don't know what they're doing. Teams don't know what they're doing. Championships don't know what they're doing. So it's been... yeah, it's quite tough really to kind of try and plan for something or to try and prep for an event if you don't know what's coming around the corner. So it's been a bit of a mishmash, just trying to sort everything out and keep communication open. I think that's probably the key to it.
I think it is. And also on the games console, finally, there are lots of professionals out there who have got a professional type reason to just sit on their games console and train. Is it training?
It is training.
It is training.
You know what?
Is it?
I was really late to the game with this. I never did I'm such a technophobe. Internet's never been good enough here. I live in the middle of nowhere, so it's been never good enough to play games and all that kind of stuff. So I had a really outdated Xbox. I have actually upgraded and I have got a proper rig now. So I've got a play seat and I've got Fanatic steering wheel and I've got the WRC8 game, which is really useful because the stages are similar to WRC actual rally. So you can kind of use it to memorize the tracks. And I'm so impressed with the way that you can like change suspension. I know this has been around for years, so I sound so old here.
hey, no, we don't, we've got, I'm got a clue either, so it's all good news for us.
Yeah, no, I have.
What's an Xbox?
Well, yes. You mean you haven't got an Atari ST hooked up to the internet? No, she doesn't know.
Do you know what? I got a gaming PC and I spent 3 days on the phone to them because I had no idea what I was doing, no idea how to set it up. I felt like my granddad, when they phoned. My granddad once said, I bought one of those phones, the Blueberries, and he meant Blackberry. That's the level that I'm at here.
Hey, we're jumping ahead of ourselves just a little bit. We're going to get on to what is making up your day-to-day in terms of training and how that fits in with your career, Catie. But just set the scene exactly. Whereabouts in the UK are you? You don't have to give us an exact address, just a rough approximation.
So I'm in Kent. So yeah, pretty close to France, right in the southeast.
And you are fairly countrified, right? You're
very out of the sticks. So isolation doesn't actually feel that different for us. It's just like, normal life without the fun bits of going out and getting a coffee, because normally you don't see anyone down here anyway. So
Isn't Kent the Garden of the UK? Is it called that or something like that? Did I imagine?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, the Garden of England.
Yeah, that's it. Yes. So yeah, in a nice area.
Very nice. And let's start at the top. So you are, Catie, if you don't mind me saying, you're 22, 23 years old now?
22, yeah.
But you've spent more than half your life driving, I'm assuming. You've got on wheels inside a car, on a bike from a very young age. How did it all start for you getting behind the wheels?
I grew up here. We moved here when I was about 7, and my dad he used to be a rally driver, and then he sort of ran out of budget before I was a baby, really. When I was born, he was working at Brands Hatch and London rally schools. He started the rally schools in those two different tracks. So from there, I used to kind of go to work with him. I remember my first experience in a rally car. I was probably 4 or 5, and I was sat in the passenger seat. I was so low down, I couldn't really see what was going on. So I jumped in the car, and Dad, I think it was at Oxford Rally School, and we were going flat out towards the trees. Oh, we've got a delivery here. Sorry, my dog's going mad.
Brilliant.
That's quite all right. That's exactly what we like.
We love stuff like that.
Yeah.
Sorry. Do you know what? It's actually quite funny because where we lived, it used to be some derelict barns next to us. So we've actually had people move in during lockdown next to us, and they've moved in with dogs. And my dog's been so used to living here on her own that she's just so defensive over the whole thing.
Not
so
happy. Not happy about lockdown at all.
No, she's not happy. Yeah, she's not happy at all. But anyway, going back to my rally experience. So I was just able to see. I wasn't really able to see the track. I was just able to see the skyline. I remember flying up towards a load of trees that I saw out the window, and I just didn't think Dad was going to stop. And I thought, this is it. Dad is literally going to kill me in this car. And I remember the feeling. It was a kind of a hairpin at the bottom, and he handbrake turned it around the bottom. And I remember the feeling of the sheer speed around the bottom, and thinking, oh my God, I was so amazed when we didn't crash that I think that was probably when I fell in love with rally, and that was such a young age. But then when I was growing up, we did quad biking and Honda pilots and that sort of thing. So when I was sort of I remember I'd run home from school and I'd be like 8 years old, and I'd jump out on the quad bikes. My dad at the time had loads of instructors working. They did corporate events here, so I'd be in my school uniform completely filthy, and Mum would go mad. And it was a good upbringing.
Oh, that's in the blood then, basically. Yeah, in like a lot of things are.
After that first handbrake hairpin turn, when you were quite young, was it out of the car going, I almost died, I love this, or you were totally sold on it from that moment?
Yeah, I was. It was that. I think that was when my kind of addiction to adrenaline came in, really. I remember when we first moved here, there's a wood that's just a couple of fields away, but that was part of the motorsport business. So there was quad bike and pilot tracks, and they did paintballing and stuff like that. When we first moved here, Dad jumped on a quad bike, and he wanted to kind of explore it and see what he could make in the woods. So he went off being, he'd ridden trials for years. He was very competent on bikes and stuff. So he was flat out through the woods on a quad bike. I saw him, I was like, I want to do that. So I got on my little kid's quad bike, and he didn't know I was following him. And I was going down, I was thinking, God, he's going quite fast. I'm struggling to keep up. And we were literally nailing it through the woods. And he got to the end of the wood and he turned around and he saw me and he went, wow, you're quite handy on that then. I didn't know you could ride like that. So that was when I kind of really got into motorsport, and I really, I caught the bug for it. But then I started grass auto testing when I was 14, just at my local airfields. We had like a Peugeot 206 that we just had as a run around school run car. And I used to take that down there every other Wednesday. And yeah, I started competing in juniors then, and then I started rallying when I was 17. So yeah, it was quite late really for rallying when you think.
Is that?
Well, you can do, it's not late as in, Sebastian Ogier, world champion. I think he started when he was 23. But in comparison to the junior championships that run, you can be in, I think when you're 14, I think they have some in the UK.
Is there a standard route to get into rallying? I want to find out exactly what makes up rallying.
I know why you want to find out, because he wants to do it.
Yeah, I want to come and hang out at your house. It sounds like the best place on the
It
planet
does,
right now.
yeah.
But the route that most people take, obviously, is probably with a little bit of family help, or there's something around where you're getting into cars and vehicles at a young age. But what is the pathway? Whereas road racing is kind of karting. Did you ever do that? Does it all cross over? Which way do you go through to get into rallying? What's the route to take?
I don't think there's a kind of one set route, which is nice actually, because it makes it more accessible than, if you wanted to be an F1 driver, it's so, it's so cutthroat, and you've got such a slim chance of that, making that happen. Rally's a little bit more different than that you can afford to start later. I think most people that kind of come to me for advice, I would say get in touch with your local motor club and speak to people there, because they'll have contacts that do some club rallying on like national level, and that's a really good way if you want to marshal at some events or help the organisers out. That's a good way to make contacts, and then from that you might be able to get a little bit of sponsorship from people if they see kind of a youngster coming up and wanting to get involved. I actually started completely backwards way. So what happened was we were spectating over at Ypres Rally in Belgium. It was a round of the European Championship, and I don't know if you've been to Ypres Rally, but it's beautiful. It's like in the square of this Belgian town. There's free-to-eat and beers. Like it's so Belgian.
I'm there.
We're there.
In the centre of this square, they have a service park for the rally, and they have the podium, and then all the stages are sort of 10 minutes around in that area in the fields, and yeah, it's really awesome. And we got speaking to one of the organisers just by chance in one of the bars, and they said that there was a shortage of girls. My dad at the time was like, oh, well, she's pretty handy. And so the organiser actually put us in touch with the Peugeot factory team at the time, who were running, it was coming towards the end of the season, and they were running a sort of open test in Mont Blanc, actually. So it was literally off the side of the mountain. And that was with the R2 car, so the front wheel drive Peugeot that they use for rally. And I was completely out of my depth. They invited us along, and we said, well, we'll go for the weekend as an experience if nothing else. But I jumped in this car. I was 17 at the time, so I just started driving in England. Failed my driving test first time as well.
I was going to ask about that. That's brilliant.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. What sorts of cars had you driven up until that point? Like full race spec rally cars or not?
So I hadn't even sat in a rally car before. No kind of like club level sort of, build your own. It was literally, I'd gone from doing grass auto testing in a Peugeot 206, which was falling apart completely, to jumping in this factory car, which was sequential gears. It was left-hand drive. It was like launch control. There were so many things, and I was just sat there like, I have no idea what any of this is. I remember they put in the French champion next to me at the time, and they had some journalists and press this. They were like, who's this young girl jumping in the car? And it was literally off the side of a mountain on a gravel track, and this guy jumped in, and I didn't have anything to relate it to, so I didn't really get how dangerous it was. And the French champion jumped in next to me. He didn't speak much English, and he just sort of said, this is a really dangerous road. If you crash here, it could be massive. And I was like, oh. And so we started on this track, and I only had it in road mode. I didn't realise. I did a few runs, and I was like, oh my God, that's insane. That's so fast. And then I realised, I came to the end, and he said, that's not in stage mode yet. So it's literally just like what you'd normally like trundle along in the normal streets before you get to stages. That's what I was driving in. But anyway, through the afternoon, we kind of built it up slowly. And by the end, I'd completely caught the bug of it. And at this test, it was kind of a press event. There was European champions there, and I was sharing the car with all these really, like the guys that I'd watch on TV. But anyway, towards the end of it, they sort of said, we're looking for a project to come, to bring like a beginner from rally the way through. There needs to be more women in sport. So it was kind of right place, right time for me. I was able to come back and find some sport. I became a Peugeot ambassador kind of soon. And I was able to find some sponsorship as well locally, which helped out. But I only did 2 rounds, I think, in my first year, because I was actually doing my A-levels at school at the same time. But that's when I sort of decided I didn't want to go to university and I wanted to do rallying, because at the same time I wanted to be a vet, so I was looking around veterinary colleges at the same time as like trying to train for international rallies.
Just turning up outside the vets and just handbraking it into a parking spot. Yeah, about this job.
And I'd have this kind of juxtaposition in my life where I'd be going to like a lecture and they were talking about 7 years, you know, studying textbooks. And whilst I'd love to have done that, at the same time, I was going out the weekend, and to get my international license, I had to do 6 rallies in the UK, 6 kind of small national kind of airfield type events to get the signatures on my license. So we got a little 106 Peugeot, and we did that. Just, you know, we were literally trundling around, because if I retired, I wouldn't have that signature. And I was on such a short time frame until my first European Championship event. I had
to get the license for before you could actually drive.
Yeah, exactly. Because I didn't have any kind of rally license, so that was one of the stipulations. So my dad was co-driving for that. So we had some fun. So it was like, you know, the way up in at that time, and it was quite an easy decision in the end.
How does that work with your dad?
Excellent.
Because it may be a total cliche, but I don't think it is. Parents teaching their kids how to drive, doesn't always work out so well for most people. How did that work? Because obviously you could already drive from a very young age.
I could imagine.
But did you ever come to blows with your dad, or have you ever, in terms of racing and training and co-driving?
It is a daily argument, I'd say, in our house.
Okay.
Not on an event, it's arguing about the simulator or arguing about an onboard we're watching. But when I first started driving on the road, I'd only ever really driven on grass, because I'd done grass water testing. So I was so used to having to brake so gently, because obviously you want to lock the wheels up. And, you know, I kind of I'd never driven on tarmac, which seems crazy. And I woke up on my birthday, and we decided we were going to drive to Brighton, which was like an hour and 45-minute drive. So quite an ambitious drive for your first time out on the road. And I remember it was in November, so it was really raining. It was a horrible day. And we drove out onto the lane, and we live in in the countryside where there's really, really narrow lanes. And I was driving down the road, probably only doing 40 miles an hour, but that felt fast to me at the time. So I'd only driven on grass, you know.
Sure.
And I was going down the road, and then a bus came around on the wrong side of the road coming towards me. And I panicked. And instead of going hard on the brakes like anyone else would, I kicked in that we were on grass. So I was just feathering the brake like that and going towards the bus. Anyway, luckily there was a pulling into a field just on the left as the bus was coming towards us. As we got in, Dad realised I was going too fast, so he pulled the handbrake on and completely spun us into the middle of the road. The bus went past, we spun, and I was literally pointing in the wrong direction of the road. That was my first like on the road experience. So that was quite an argument we had after that.
Yeah, I bet.
I could see somebody then coming up to the vehicle after saying, "You're right," and your dad just casually letting the window down. Actually, yeah, we're rally drivers. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Step away from the vehicle.
Know what we're doing.
Yeah.
So
those arguments continue though all the way through. You know, when we're on events and stuff, I'll be talking to the engineers about setup, and Dad will be like, no, hang on. And he was driving in the era of like rear-wheel drive escorts and stuff, which is completely different to the driving style now.
How much is he involved? How much is the family involved in your actual racing when you go to events?
Yeah, he's massively important for me. When I was starting, it wasn't so much, well, it was the driving side of it, but I'd always be surrounded by kind of other guys that would be able to give me advice as a beginner, or engineers. So I had a lot of support from that side. It would be more like the business side of it, because obviously I was coming into the motorsport industry, which we all know can be quite, tough. It's huge budgets. It's a lot to deal with. And I was sort of just coming out of school. So I had to learn quite quickly in a lot of different areas. But I haven't done a rally where he hasn't been. And he always says Colin McRae's dad went to every rally with him, so he's going to come to every rally with me. That's his argument. So I love it though.
Yeah,
also,
I don't think you're going to keep him away, are you really?
No, and I'm not old enough to hire a car when I go to different countries. So in the airport, I can't get a hire car, so I've got to do it in his name and be a lane driver on the insurance. Little do they know, I'll be hurling it around the rim of volcanoes and stuff.
Yeah, that's probably don't give her a car. Do not give her a car.
Well, do you know, when we turn up to events now, so in the European Championship, when we went to the Azores Island, which is quite a small island, when we'd arrived, they'd have a list of the rally entry, and anyone that was on the entry list wasn't allowed to hire cars.
I was going to say, honestly, that's what I thought. I thought there must be some events where, like, you're red flagged on car hire and stuff like that.
Yeah. And if you've got a bit more budget, some guys they have like Subarus or Mitsubishis that they then ship around with rally cars just for that reason, because you can't hire them.
Right.
Yeah, but I haven't got there yet. So we normally, I mean, we've had it before where we've been, you know, the rally's finished, we've been out at the after rally party, we've got up in the morning, it's been like 6 o'clock in the morning, we're like, oh god, we've got to take this hire car back, and we've seen like I've you know, put a dent or a scratch into it, and we've literally been on white cars fixing it with toothpaste, or black cars fixing it with brake dust, you know, just trying to cover it up a bit. Make it
yeah, because they're not going to believe you at all. Say, oh, it was someone else from the rally driver. Yeah, not at all.
I think we've all been there with patching up hire cars at some point. I know I have.
Tell us how the scene is, because you mentioned about the project, which sounds amazing. From Peugeot, was it? They wanted to bring along new, fresh talent and level the playing field a little bit in terms of having more women in sport. How does the sport sit at the moment in rally driving, in that style of driving, with women in sport? How many of you are there out there competing alongside the men?
So it's not as even as we'd like it to be. It is very male dominated, definitely. I mean, I've been in championships, for example, when I was in the European Championship, where they would have ladies trophies, although we all compete together, which is what I absolutely love about the sport. And that's the only way I kind of pitch where I'm at. I never pitch myself against other girls, just because I believe that we can be on the same level as the boys. And so you want to pitch yourself against the fastest driver. So that's one of the reasons we went straight to the European Championship, is because we said the level of talent out there is as good as it gets at this age category in this car. Yeah. So if you can see where you are against them, you've got, you know, the best kind of chance of progressing quickly. So the ladies' trophy is something that they put into championships, which is great because it encourages females in, and it's an initiative for girls to kind of compete in championship, which is awesome. But in terms of actual pace and career progression, I always pitch myself against the boys, because I think that's important to do that if you want to kind of push yourself. I'd rather be bottom of the class than I would top of the class, you know, in terms of
well, I guess it's not so much pitching yourself against the boys, it's just pitching yourself against the person who's the fastest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think the only reason the women aren't at the top at the minute is because it's the same as F1, you know, they're not coming in at entry level. So if you're not coming in at entry level, you've got a less chance of being there, you know, at the top, because not every boy that starts out karting with the wish to be the next Lewis Hamilton makes it, the same as not every girl does. So if you just had more girls coming in, you've got a higher chance of finding somebody with all the right attributes to make that happen.
What do you think are the barriers to entry for women? What was it like for you? I mean, you in a lucky position in that you were there with your dad. There was some rallying heritage there alongside you, but did you ever feel like it was uncomfortable for women in rallying? Has there ever been that case in terms of the men and the rivalry between men and women?
I don't think I have. I've been lucky, actually. I think probably more from like social media, as always. I mean, in terms of the drivers that I've been surrounded with, when I went into the European Championship, I went in as the kid that hadn't even done a British rally before. So I think probably out of pity, they would send me on board and help me, you know. When you start to get faster and start to become competitive, that drips off a bit, and, you know, everyone's kind of each their own. But that's the way you want it to be, really. You don't want to be taken it as a joke. But when I did first start, I remember I'd look after my first event in IPA. I remember I looked on the internet and someone was like, why has she got this drive? My son can go. And they would say stuff like, oh, go and paint your nails and make me a sandwich, get out the rally car, you know, all that sort of stuff. And you read it and you're like, really?
So how did that didn't affect you at all? That just motivated you more?
It's actually, the first time I read it, I remember reading it thinking, oh my God, I was heartbroken, because I was thinking, God, you know, I'm not out there saying I'm the fastest in the world. I'm at the beginning. Everyone has to start somewhere. I probably attracted more media attention because I was a girl doing it than a boy would. You know, if a boy started out and did his first rally, people probably wouldn't pay that much attention to it. They'd be like, oh, he's learning. But I wasn't given that same kind of consideration, I don't think. But to be honest, at the same time, I realised I probably wouldn't be where I was if I was a boy. You know, I wouldn't have walked into that opportunity. So it was kind of part of the game, and I appreciated that, you know, I was in a position doing what I love. And from that point, I had to learn. It was quite a hard lesson, but you have to learn not to listen to what people say. And I read something of Sebastian Ogier's at the time. He was saying, if you post a video or post an onboard, and there's 1,000 brilliant comments about it and one bad comment, the one bad comment is the one that you'll remember. So you just kind of take it on your chin and accept it. I mean, at the end of the day, you're out there living your dream and you're having fun. You made great mates in championships. Yeah,
exactly. You're having a world of a time. That person trolling you possibly isn't.
Me and Matt are used to it. You know,
used to trolling people like Catie living a dream life. Yeah, that's right.
I'm all about, you know, the other way around. I think we're happy if we get one positive comment. So
I'll take a negative comment. It's attention, all right.
Yeah.
Before we jump along to where we are right now, tell us about your CBBC stardom, because that's how I knew you from first. My kids falling in love with Catie and Amazing Machines, and then we met at the NEC at Motorcycle Live. How did that come about? That whole show, and then I've read your thoughts on it. The decision you had to make to step away from that in order to focus on your driving career. What was that whole timeline like?
So looking back, it was a completely insane year. It was probably my busiest year in terms of motorsport, because I was doing a full season in the European Championship, which was pretty intense. And between that, I was fitting in a sort of probably, I'd say I'd probably have one day off if I was lucky after a rally or before a rally in between filming. So because obviously the TV had a schedule as well, it had to be out by a certain amount of time. We had to fit in every day when I wasn't competing that I would be filming. So we'd be filming 2 machines every single day. So I'd be learning how to fly a helicopter in the morning and a fighter jet in the afternoon. And then that evening we'd wrap and we'd drive to Scotland. And up there I'd be doing, I'd be in a mine with the massive kind of diggers. And then it was crazy. I'd be doing, it was so full on.
And this is 2018, Catie?
Is it? Yeah, I can't remember the exact. Yeah.
2018, so, yeah. And you kind of explained it there, but just for those that don't know, what is Catie's Amazing Machines and that whole CBBC show exactly?
So the show actually came about, I was on BBC Breakfast. The year before I'd won the Ladies European Championship, so I was on BBC Breakfast, and one of the kids producers from BBC was watching, and he there came up with the idea, very similar, wanted to have female as a role model in kind of an action sports world and wanted to promote that. And so it was kind of like Top Gear for kids that they came up with. So we filmed a pilot of it, and we filmed a monster truck in the pilot episode. And he said typically a commission for a series like that takes about 2 years to go through, through all the different levels. And within 2 months, they'd fast tracked it, and they were like, we need this show out there. So we started filming a few months later. And my mum, luckily, was, because normally rally for me would be a full-time job, whether it's emails or appearances with sponsors, all the things taken over. So luckily my mum was a makeup artist in TV. So I got her to be my makeup artist. So we'd share the driving. She could reply to emails while I was filming, and it worked quite well. We were a little team doing it. But that was, we sort of tested every machine, from like submarines, jet skis. We kind of went all over the place. Well, we did snow plows in the Alps before the runs opened in the morning. I went up with like the French team in Val Thorens, and I was absolutely living my dream.
So was it quite a hard decision, because you did amazingly at that and got quite some notoriety as a presenter? Was the opportunity on the table, obviously, to carry on with that, but did you think in your mind, well, I could go the presenting route and just take that on, still with this sort of sporting motorsports background? Were you at that crossroads at a point?
Massively, I was, because it's quite, I was very aware that my sister wanted to be a presenter and wanted to be an actress when she was growing up. So I was aware of what, she'd been trawling the streets in London, handing out her TV. So I was very aware of what it takes.
Oh dear.
She doesn't now. She changed career. She didn't want to do that. So it was okay.
Okay.
She's probably on the other end of the spectrum. She went out to India to become a yoga teacher and now does cooking classes and writes cooking books and stuff like that.
Well, that sounds good as well.
So for me, it was a difficult decision, because I appreciated the fortunate position I was in. At the time, the show did so well, and I was having so many brilliant messages from it that they straight away commissioned another 2 years. So that was like double budgets. We were flying to Florida. It was going to be amazing places. But it was one of those times in life where I thought, I was so set on my rallying, and this is where I was wanting to go. This is where I wanted to be. It wasn't something that the TV show wasn't something that I'd actively looked for. So although I wasn't taking it for granted, it wasn't in my sort of like plan. And if I'd have given up rallying, I wouldn't have been able to fulfill the adrenaline, what got me there in the first place. And so it was a really difficult decision, because they were so desperate to make it happen. Obviously, as you would be if you've got a successful show, it had to go forwards, and luckily it has with a different presenter. And I was desperate to do it, but it really clashed. And I knew that if I did that, I would half be doing my rally season, I'd be half be doing the TV show, and I didn't want to only do something by half. And it was at the same time as I was signing with Red Bull as well. And it was massive kind of there's a lot of value in that as a motorsports athlete. I knew what that kind of took, and what you'd have to give to kind of make it happen. So I just thought, I'm young, a motorsport career won't be there forever. Presenting is probably something, the kind of thing you come back to after your career in motorsport or whatever.
Well, or if your career in any sport didn't work at all, then you try and flog every dead horse you can. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, well, good on you for doing that. I reckon that's great. Absolutely, to not give it to not give up on a dream. You know, when you've had a real exactly. You've had a real good opportunity stuck in front of your nose, and you've gone, no, I want to be a rally driver. And
do you know, typically we went out the following year and we had probably the worst season of my rally career. We had crashes, everything like that. And at the end of it, you know, I remember I literally rolled in Spain. It was our test day before the event, and it was so unlucky. We'd been out there the week before the event and we'd done so much preparation, me and my co-driver, training every single day, and we was like hot on it for this result. And in our testing, our times were so good against our teammate who was French champion. I was really feeling on fire. And then the classic last run of the day came in, and we were racing on really hot, abrasive Spanish tarmac. And throughout the day, it was getting about 6 o'clock in the evening, and that had started to break up where so many cars had been over it. It had formed a really thin layer of gravel, but one that you couldn't see. It was like a freak kind of, I don't know what happened. Within half an hour, it had changed. We went out doing the same thing we'd done all day. You know, we were racing on the same road all day, so braking at the same point, same gear. This time, the car just absolutely flipped round on like a hairpin at the bottom, and I was completely out of control. We ended up kind of falling down a ravine off the side of the road, and we got the car wedged. There was like a bank like this, and our car was stuck across it, quite flat. No, not a lot of damage on it, but you know, there's a river at the bottom of it. So we climbed out, and the same corner, my teammate came down from the previous year, did exactly the same, landed on top of my car and squashed it flat.
What?
And then the next 3 cars also did the same, all in like within 200 meters of each other on the stage. One nearly rolled off the side of the mountain, was stuck on the armco with the car balancing. It was like one of those movies, you know, when you see it rocking.
Oh, so you felt a little bit better about what you did after they all
yeah,
started putting in every single car. It's not me. it gave
me a bit more credibility, but I still stood there and thought, oh my god, I could be in Florida right now talking about, you know, a jet ski that I'm filming on, and then, you know, having an easy life. And I remember looking at it and I was thinking, what am I doing?
Tell me, in that season,
what a great story.
What was I forget the name of the girl that's taken on the same show now.
Grace.
Grace's Amazing Machines.
Yeah.
Were her episodes live during that season, that year that you decided not to do it? I'm just imagining you catching it and just seething every so often after a bad rally weekend.
That should be me.
They came out, I think towards the second half of the season. To be honest, I was so busy, I was away, I only caught a few of them. But they still do replays. My show's actually just gone out in Malaysia and Australia, so I'm getting a load of messages from people, especially during lockdown, saying, oh, my son's birthday's been cancelled, can you send him a video? And, you know, I'm getting that kind of thing at the minute.
She's very big in Australasia. Very big in Australasia. Yeah.
Good.
That is awesome. With the rallying now, now you put the hold on presenting. Good. That gives Jeff and I a little bit more chance to try and get some more work in before you steal it all when you take on presenting. With the rallying now, where are you at in terms of your speed, your placing against those that you're comparing yourself against? What makes up the team, and what will be next when lockdown is done?
Well, it was quite a big step for me towards the end of last year, really. It turned out to be the right decision that I made, because I got offered a place in the World Rally Championship, so the Junior World Rally Championship at the end of last year, which for me was a massive step up, something that I probably, just looking at the situation at this stage in my career, I probably wouldn't have gone into the World Championship this early. It's one of those championships where you need so much experience, and typically somebody would do 5 years in the European Championship, and they'd also be doing the recce's of the World Championship, so they'd get a feel for the kind of roads, the kind of events. The events are longer, the hours are longer, so it takes a lot more physically as well to do those events. So I hadn't done any of that. I'd gone straight from European Championship for a couple of years, and then I thought, okay, World Championship it is then. But it was in line with what a lot of my sponsors wanted, and also the championships promoting more women in motorsport as well. And so it was another one of those times in my life where I thought, well, if anything, it will be a great year. I can't turn that down. So we actually had our first event in Sweden, but it was, you know, I could not believe it because it was the start of the year, and my co-driver, who I've been with for a couple of years, And I was kind of assuming we'd be together this year. You know, it was a massive step up. It was a new car completely. I'd never driven the Ford before. And I was walking into a championship where the juniors have been in this. Bearing in mind, you're a junior until you're like 28. So a lot of them have got a lot more experience than me in this championship.
You're a junior until you're 28.
Yeah. And they do that to keep the costs down. So we're capped on tyres. The running costs are a lot cheaper on the R2 than they would be on the R5. So it's kind of, they do it, you know, to make it, to give you as fair a chance as possible and have a good shot at it. And so it was all new team, new roads, new rallies, new championship. I thought, okay, at least I have a bit of like stability in that I'll have the same co-driver. And then 2 weeks before the first event, she said, oh no, I'm kind of retiring from co-driving. So within that time, I actually went out to Rally Sweden I met my co-driver for the first time out in Sweden, having done no training, no preparation, hadn't tested the car. And so that was a baptism of fire. And while,
so that was you went out to Sweden and you did the first race when you went out on that trip. Yeah. You hadn't done any preparation before.
No,
wow.
I didn't even know how to turn the car on. Bearing in mind, I had to know all the mechanic stuff to be able to fix while we were out there. And the rally, we weren't even sure if it was going to happen because of the climate out there. There was no snow in Sweden. It's a snow event. There was no snow at all until probably the week before the rally. And so we were then driving on the majority of the rally was gravel roads with snow tyres on, so studs, thick spiky studs, which was like absolute sheet ice, because you go onto tarmac sections on the road and you'd be driving with these metal like studs on and it would just completely wear down, so that when you went back onto the snow sections you'd be on slick tires effectively. So you needed so much experience to be able to have a decent result out there. There were so many punctures, and that from the organizers side, they had to run the event because if they cancel it, that's a lot of money, that's broadcast rights, there's a lot going on. And I'm glad that we did, because it was some experience, but it was sort of only half the event of what it would historically be in terms of kilometers. So yeah, I mean, I survived that one, and then we were thinking, right, okay, we'll get our heads down, we'll do some training. I was going to audition a few co-drivers over this time to have I'm looking for a long-time co-driver that will be able to move through me, be as motivated as me. So it's so important, that relationship that you have. But yeah, obviously that, the universe was saying otherwise, and that didn't happen. And
you're right, the right co-driver wasn't out there right now, but they will be after lockdown. That's what the universe was saying.
Exactly. And that's one of the things I was lucky. Just before, I remember as Belgium actually went into lockdown, I'd agreed to go and meet a girl from Germany. So I was driving down to Belgium, she was going to drive up from Germany, and we were meeting in Belgium. And I went over there, and as I arrived, Belgium went into lockdown, as in the restaurants were shutting and everything. So in my hotel, I arrived and they said, breakfast, we have to bring it up to your room. You're not allowed to sit in the hotel lobby. You're not allowed to socialise. If you want a drink from the hotel bar, we have to bring it up to your room. And, it was literally as it was going into lockdown, no restaurants, no cafes. So I just met this girl in the car the next day in like a ghost town, and we did just, we did runs of a local Belgian rally roads around that area, and I quickly got back before they shut the border, luckily. But yeah, that was, I was actually really fortunate that I went over there at that point, because then I was able to at least have something to hold on to, that we've met. She knows my pacemaker system, so hopefully now going forwards we'll be a step ahead, as if I was sitting here thinking, I wonder who's going to co-drive me. Because one thing I'm conscious of is, while it's all very quiet at the minute, it might be the case that actually quite quickly it turns around and they say, right, this event's happening, the car's going to be there then. And I'll as a driver, you normally do months of preparation, learning the stages and testing and stuff, so you kind of want to be on the ball with it when things get back to normal.
Explain that co-driver relationship, because obviously that's a fairly unique situation within sport, where of course every sport has coaches, often on the touchline or in the background or in the ears, but to be right there next to you, is it a full distinct and unique language and form of communication you develop with each co-driver, or is it very generic? Is there a shorthand that everybody uses? Is there a chat that everybody uses, or it just depends on the team setup?
It is very specific to your kind of relationship with your co-driver. So I've always had foreign co-drivers as well. I've always had girls. We've done that from like a point of getting more women in motorsport. I think subconsciously, if you look at a male co-driver and a female driver, without even thinking about it, it can look like the male's coaching the female around in a motorsport environment and is telling them how to drive on stages. So we wanted it to be, we're here out of merit. This is what we're doing. We're going to do the tyre changes at the side of the road. And you wouldn't believe the amount of spectators that get pull up asking if I want to help changing tyres at the side of the road as well. It's so funny the way that our brains are. It's just the mapping that we're in, isn't it, as a society? Yeah. But yeah, it is a massively important relationship, because they have to be as motivated as you are to stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning checking the pace notes against the video for the stages that are going to start at 6 o'clock in the morning. You know, they have to make it, to be successful, there's so much planning, and it's such a fine line between being fast and not being fast, that you need somebody that's going to be able to say, oh, we've got the opportunity to go testing next Monday, free. Yeah, okay, I'll drop everything, I can come. Which is tough because, you know, for a lot of people, it's not a full-time job. So you have to find a job that's flexible to be able to allow you to have that time off work. Or, you know, it is difficult, especially when you're kind of in the interim levels between being a factory co-driver for a team and, you know, working your way up. But for example, the pace notes, I always use 1 to 6. So 1 would be like a hairpin and 6 would be like pretty much flat out. So it keeps it quite simple, but then you have a lot of words to describe the corner. So I'll have long, short, half long, and that's to do with where you can pitch the car in towards the apex, or it might tighten and open. And then you have information. So for example, in Finland, there's so many crests where it's flat out and you can't see where the road goes afterwards. You need to have information about where to stay, which side of the road to stay on the crest in preparation for the next corner. So the co-driver that I had before was actually Petter Solberg's family co-driver for I think 4 years previously. So I would go to roads and literally train with Petter Solberg's pace notes, which was insane. But I could not retain the information that he had in his pace notes. You know, he's a driver that's so pedantic. He'll have like 3 left, keep very in, tightens a bit, opens, and that would just be to describe about 10 meters of the track. You know, my brain was like, to think the speeds that he drives, I was like, I can't keep up with that. So it is individual to what a driver works with. I have more information than a lot of drivers I know, but it is very, you know, there's no point in me having Petter Solberg's pace notes and my co-driver reading them to me if I can't understand what he means, or I can't keep up with it. And I remember in one of my events last year, I tried putting in a lot of information, and my co-driver would say it to me, and I'd be hurling down the straight, and I wouldn't process it. So I'd get to the end and think, am I going left or right? So I thought at that point, you know, you need to make it very individual.
You just go, so what was the first instruction? Just go back.
And by that point, you're off the road, aren't you?
But how hard is it not to, because you've obviously helped make these notes and whatever, and you know the circuit and memorize the circuit ahead of you, or the terrain ahead of you. How hard is it then to not get too ahead of yourself in your brain? You see what I mean? So like you're driving, you think, actually, I know 2 miles up the road that's coming, but I guess you just have to try and switch all that off and then not remember the stuff yourself and take, because your brain must be so focused on actually handling the car that you can't start thinking too far ahead yourself.
It is a very fine line, and actually I think it's probably with most drivers you learn the hard way, definitely. So when I first started, I did not listen to my co-driver at all. She'd be sitting there giving me perfectly good notes, but I would be classic, like one-man band. I'm driving what I see. I think, you know, this goes, you can't ever drive. You learn that you can't ever drive fast just by driving what you see. You know, a corner that might look like a hairpin might actually be flat out. So if you lift, you've lost half a tenth of a second, which could be, you know, another 5 miles an hour at the end of the next straight. So you have to learn that you have to, if I say brake by the tree, I'm braking by that tree, even if it looks flat out, because we might be going hairpin left. So you have to trust it. And I learned by crashing, actually. I was in the Azores, the volcanic.
That often teaches you, doesn't it?
It was a really schoolboy area. It was so embarrassing. And of course, someone was standing there filming it on YouTube as well. What had happened was, and one of the German drivers had given me his onboards before the event and said, tricky rally, try and familiarize yourself. There's a fine line. You either, when you're in that position, you have to learn every inch of every stage, or you just familiarize yourself. Because if you half know it, you're going to get caught out. And that happened to me. I was on a stage and I saw a corner. I recognized 2 trees and I thought, this is this bit, very fast. It looks narrow, but it's actually flat through here. My co-driver said brake. We're going like left 3, which is probably like a 90-degree left. And I thought, no, it's not. And I went into it on the side of the road, completely straight line in the corner, and just rode up the bank and just rolled. It was a slow crash, but it was still like, to somebody standing there spectating, they must have thought, she just like learned how to drive at the beginning of this stage.
Is she drunk?
When that happens, what is the atmosphere like in the car? Do you get certain co-drivers that just keep quiet, or do you get occasionally ones that just go?
I like the idea of them being,
say I told you so, but
upside down in the car with the clip.
You'll go, yeah, that was my fault. That was my fault. That was my bad.
Put the pen away and just.
You know what? It is one of those situations. When I was first learning, I was with a German co-driver, Anna. She was brilliant, and she was a lawyer as well, so she was so efficient, so matter of fact with things. But she had a lot more experience than me, so she'd be training me and I'd be kind of trying to take it in, and but obviously inevitably there were a lot of crashes. But yeah, and she kind of accepted that, so I was lucky. But sometimes you do have to hold your hand up and say, look, I'm sorry. But at the same time,
guilty.
It's that kind of environment that you really learn what your relationship's like with the co-driver, and
I
if
bet.
it will work going forward. Because in that such, I've been with people before that have flapped in that situation, and you just go to pot. In that moment, you need to be right. First of all, are we blocking the road for the cars behind? Is it safe? Second of all, how do we get the car back on its wheels to keep going? And so you need to be very matter of fact with it, and you need to just, every second counts. So you're trying to, keep going. And if you've got someone that's absolutely flapping, then obviously, sometimes that happens after a crash. I mean, we've done it before. We've been upside down in the car. We've been, go on, quick, get out. We've unflipped our belts, and we've both just hit the roof because obviously upside down. You don't think about things like that, do you?
Is there onboard video footage of those incidents? Because surely you have a camera pointing back at you of you just unclipping.
I'm sure there is somewhere. Yeah, I'm sure there is actually.
How good
I
would
can
that
just
be?
imagine. I can just imagine a strange atmosphere in the car. It's just like, it's not like you can turn the radio on and not talk to each other for the rest of the.
Yeah.
And often, with those crashes, you can guarantee you will have crashed in the middle of nowhere, and you won't be recovered until 8 o'clock that night. So you'll be there. I mean, there was a story. One of my teammates last year, he was out somewhere in France. It was getting cold in the evening. He'd gone off the side of a mountain. They started burning parts of the car to keep warm. They made this little fire, and they were standing around it.
No.
I mean, we did this at the top of the volcano. We had a double puncture, and we only had one spare, so we had to retire. At the top of the volcano, I was sitting on the start line, and I was literally on the metal on the rim, and this was such a dangerous stage. It had drops either side, and it was so narrow. And I remember that they have kind of fire brigades and stuff at the start line, and they came over to me and said, you've got puncture. And I said, yeah, it's fine. And we'd agreed that we weren't going to do that much more damage by driving down the stage, but we'd agreed that we didn't want to retire at this point because we were in the middle of nowhere. So we were going to retire at the end of that stage where there was like a bit more civilization and stuff. So we just drove through it, keeping out of everyone's way, obviously. But we just said, we're not retiring here. We can't just stand here all day. So we had to get down to the bottom.
So you nursed it home with a puncture.
It sounds pretty treacherous considering that you are like within all of these different stages at different races. What's the furthest away from someone you'll be if you were to have an incident? That seems pretty gnarly. I would have thought there'd always be someone somewhere nearby. You
can be like, I mean, in terms of marshals on stages, it's pretty good. They'll be within a kilometre. But in terms of your team and recovering the vehicle, it can be 200 kilometres. And so, if there's not a recovery truck around, you also have to remember that once we've been through once, you'll go off and do a different set of stages. But the afternoon loop might come back through. So you've only got a time frame to be recovered before the cars start coming back again. So if they miss that with the recovery trucks, and obviously they only have a certain amount of recovery trucks per rally, you're then there all evening, and it's not very comfortable, especially in Sweden. One of the rules is you have to take a big Arctic coat if you retire in Sweden, because it can be minus 20 degrees out there, and it can be freezing if you don't have.
Never stop to think about it. Do you have to have like food parcels or something for that as well, or not? I mean, I know it was me thinking with my belly again.
Yeah. Where am I going to get my pie?
I always carry a chocolate bar in the car. Yeah, well.
Being serious. I mean, if you're stuck out in the middle of nowhere for ages, and you, especially if you've had a huge wreck and adrenaline and shock and all that kind of stuff, that's.
I mean, before you have to. This is kind of one of the reasons I love rallies, because you feel like Bear Grylls sometimes. I mean, I remember in Rally Mont Blanc, we'd gone off the side of the mountain, crashed. Our car was sort of destroyed at the bottom, and we were stuck. I'd actually broken a bone in my hand, and my co-driver had hurt her neck. But it wasn't bad enough for us to call an ambulance, because obviously if you needed medical help, they'll shut the stage, and but that ruins the competition for everyone else on that stage. So we both said, we're fine, we'll go to the hospital to get checked out later, but we're all right for now. And so we actually walked down a little farm track, and there was an old lady, this is French mountain, so it was like an alpine hut. And we knocked on the door. She didn't speak any English. I spoke a little bit of French, and I asked her for some ice, and she gave me and my co-driver ice for my hand and ice for my co-driver's neck. So we sat there with her. She gave us a drink, and we, it's quite funny actually, the situations that you can get yourself into sometimes with it.
I want to see that side of rallying. I want to watch the rallying, but I want to see rally drivers just walking down a country road, helmet in hand, trying to find a local to help them out.
Thumb somebody down. Yeah, can you give us a lift? You give us a lift.
Yeah, and it will be, the spectators that you retire next to. I've done it before where you've retired and you've been next to spectators that are like, Polish guys that are having the weekend of it. They're camping, they've got barbecue, they've got beers, and they'll invite you to join them. And you're kind of so pissed off by that point that you're like, oh, actually, I'll have a hot dog with you guys. I'll sit here and chat for a bit. And then on the other side of it, I've had people before. I've crashed my car. You know, the spectators that are like wanting to collect rally artifacts, and I've had it where the bumper will be like 3 or 4 grand out of our budget, and we've crashed, and I've seen someone run over, pick it off the car and run off with it because they're having a souvenir. But to me, that's like, oh, brilliant. I'll just keep going like that.
Oh my
Making
God.
it rain out on the course. Okay.
Mad.
It is absolutely
That's a good
mad.
insight to that. I never stopped to think of those, which you wouldn't, you know, that side of rallying. And I always just thought you'd crash. There'd be somebody there straight on the scene. You get picked up, driven off, helicoptered out of there, whatever. I've never imagined that you'd have to be waiting around for hours to somebody. I mean, obviously with the like something like the Paris Dakar, I appreciate that with that, but with rallying, I would have thought they'd be right there on the scene. There'd be somebody there to get you.
It's almost perfectly mentioned there, Jeff, because obviously you're pushing to go through the junior world rally onto the full-blown world rally at some point over the next few years. Are there any other rally style races like the Paris Dakar, like Pikes Peak or anything like that? There's something that you could possibly do or would be interested in doing at some stage. Do you do that alongside the world rally, or do you wait until your actual more core rallying time is done?
I think, yeah, if the opportunity comes up, I never kind of say no to anything, really. I mean, I did an ice race with Bentley at the beginning of the year. It was insane. And that was, you know, we went out to Finland to test that on their testing grounds, and I was racing around in this like 2-ton Bentley or whatever it was. And we were competing against all of these sports cars, which were like literally a third of the weight, and it was such a funny experience. So I do love kind of stepping out of my comfort zone, and I think you learn transferable skills that then you'll be able to put back into the rally car. Obviously WRC is my focus, and that's kind of where I want to progress. But for example, I'm now entered into the drivers pool for the new Extreme E Championship, which is coming up. So that will be that's pretty cool. They've announced that their kind of rules on this are they have to have a female driver in the team and a male driver. And it will be like the male does a lap, jumps out, the female does a lap, and it's an accumulative time. So it's
and this is rallying. This is electric car rallying.
Yeah, so this is places like we're doing it in Greenland, that we're doing it in the Amazon, and the aim for that is you'll race in destroyed areas. So for example, where they've had deforestation in the Amazon, you'll go along and race with these kind of SUVs over the harsh environment, and then they've got a ship. It's like a weird complex concept, but they've got a ship that travels around the world with labs and scientists and specialist ecologists in that area. Where you've raced, they then put money and they develop into rebuilding that area. So it's like sustainable and it's giving something back, which I think most sport, you know, is a bit of a fine line sometimes with, you know, the world around us now. Everyone's a bit more conscious of what we're putting out into the world. So it's a nice kind of, it's a nice concept really to be involved in. So you get put into a driver's pool, and then the teams choose their drivers from that driver's pool as well. So that's for next year. So we'll see if anything comes out of that. But it's different. And all of those kind of experiences that you'd have on the different surfaces again, because you're racing on snow and ice, like literally on a glacier in Greenland. And then you're going to the Amazon, and then we're going to places that have had really bad flooding in Indonesian islands. It will be pretty epic. I'm quite excited about that.
I'm just sat here listening. You are cramming a lot in to 23 years of age, and because not only are you having these experiences, but the places you're going to. I mean, that's awesome. Like, you're going to the Amazon. That's
speaking of cramming quite a lot in at such a tender age. You have mentioned the word crash on numerous occasions now. In what is amounting to what? We're coming up to 4 years of rallying. Come on, what's the number on crashes where you haven't been able to carry on?
Do you know what? I'm not counting. I probably don't view crashes in the same way as somebody else would. And this is a bit of a running joke with my dad. He's installed me the idea. But, you know, when you're in rally, you're looking at, if you crash, you've got an excess of 15,000 to pay, for example. And so if you're going up to an event with that attitude of I can't push the limit because I can't crash, you're not going to be on the pace. So there's not really a lot of point in being there, if you know what I mean. Yeah. So what he always said to me was, look, if you're going to do this, it's a pile of metal at the other day. If you crash, you know, the team rebuild it and you rebuild that pile of metal. He says, don't look at it as an expensive race car. And so we will have this running joke. A crash for me is when I've totaled the car and it is a complete write-off. I've done it before in Rome where I've scraped a barrier and literally put a hole in the side of the car, and I've left the livery of my car on an Armco with the full like sponsor branding and everything. I have no idea how I did it, but it's stuck onto the side of the Armco. That to me isn't a crash. That's like, that's a scrape.
That's a love tap.
Yeah. I mean, I have had a few. I went into someone's living room in Poland once, which was pretty nasty at the time.
Please.
This is great stuff. I know about, literally, obviously mingling with the fans is one thing, but driving into their living room is taking it.
Fucking Grace's Amazing Machines on the telly. God damn it!
God, and the old boy sat in the old boy sat in his chair, going, "God, that sounds realistic, doesn't it?" It's almost like they're in the room. It's almost like they're in the room.
Do you not take a little? You've got phones. You must have a phone with you in your ride. Do you not jump out and go, "Oh, there's another one for posterity"?
I'd let my dad know about that one by sending him a photo, actually. Yeah. That one, there was a scream on our onboard camera, and the scream wasn't of us inside the car. It was someone's voice inside the house that you could hear on the GoPro.
Oh my gosh.
It was mad. But we were lucky, actually, because it was really narrow. It was like a residential area, so it was really narrow, and it was kind of quite bumpy. And it was, it was a tough event. One of the top WRC drivers retired because he said, "This rally's too fast for me, I don't feel safe." So he actually pulled out of the rally. So we'd gone over a crest and we'd caught kind of light in the air, but when we landed, one of our wheels caught grip and the rest of them didn't. So we completely like out of control spun round, and we went sideways into a concrete pole, which flew us up in the air, and we flipped in the air and we went we kind of hit 2 stories up and then slid down the house, but it left a crack in the wall, if you know what I mean, in the living room. And we were lucky because they had actually been sitting out spectating in garden furniture that we just smashed through, but they'd gone inside to make a coffee at that point. So that was one of those kind of harrowing moments in motorsport where you think, oh my God, something with, lucky angels were on the side on that day. Luckily everyone was okay, and me and my co-driver were okay. And my dad was spectating about 2 kilometers further along in the field. And a lot of the time when you've crashed, what it will be me sending my dad a location on WhatsApp and him trying to find me and go, climbing mountains or going through fields to try and get to us. And he'll normally bring like a bag of supplies of like some crisps and some water or whatever, because obviously you won't have much. But that that was probably one of the most tough ones for me to kind of engage with, because it was everything happened so quick. And the woman, bless her, she was making us coffee afterwards. We were sat there with her, like looking at her house and looking at my car kind of shoved in the side of it. It was.
I want to see that picture. That photo's got to go up in here. Have you come out of crashes?
That's mad.
What we're going to wrap up soon, Catie, but we've got some quick-fire questions to round off with. But I thought, Jeff, we need to have some different quick-fire questions that are bespoke to Catie, and they're going to be in the form of worst crash. So I don't know.
Have you got these then? Because I haven't got these.
I'm just freestyling it at this stage.
You're freestyling.
For a change, Jeff, we haven't planned this.
Oh.
What has been your worst crash, both in terms of injury and how you have mentally, emotionally felt about it afterwards, in terms of getting back on the horse and getting back in the driving seat?
Worst crash was it wasn't my worst crash, but mentally it was my first ever. Before I did my first international rally, I actually crashed and hit a electricity pylon in testing, and I had to come back to England to set my biology A level the next morning, and the team had to prepare the car because the next afternoon we were doing qualifying in Belgium. So that was mentally a complete whirlwind. In terms of actual crashes, it wasn't that bad. I'd rolled and I'd taken out an electricity pylon, but there was no damage to us and the car could be rebuilt. But that emotionally was really tough to deal with, because I had the stress of exams as well as coming back and knowing that I'd done that.
How did that A-level exam go?
It was a biology A-level. I dropped a grade. I went to get an A, but I got a B in the end. But I was like, I'll take it.
Yeah. Biology of all things at A-level. Okay, go on, Jeff. You got to do a pop question about racing to Catie.
Okay, well, I'm thinking, like, going on what you just said there. So, how do you, like, when you have a big wreck, how do you mentally blank that out?
I think I try not to think about it too much. I just accept it's part of the game. When you see top drivers crashing and you think, okay, it's not just me, it's in the nature. If you're not pushing hard enough to crash, then you don't know where the limit is of speed. So I try not to think about it. I also, when you're in the car and your co-driver's reading your pace notes, you you don't connect necessarily with the speed you're going. You just follow the instructions. And if she's telling me it's flat, then I'm just going to drive flat because that's what she's telling me. I don't sit there and you don't have the time to think, is it safe to take this flat? Because you've made those pace notes and you've got to trust them if you want to be in a rally.
Yeah.
What's the, going on to that, just moving totally away from that, I was just thinking, driving along, you're concentrating, you're doing all that you've got to do, but has there been something that you've been driving along one day, like something has caught your eye? You must see, you're concentrating on driving, but what's the funniest thing that you've seen or the oddest thing that's happened to you while you've been doing a rally drive? You know, like you've been driving, like obviously there's a story, for example, here's one, just to give you an example of what I'm talking about. In the Motocross of Nations one year, the big World Cup of Motocross, one guy was leading the race and basically a deer ran onto the circuit and he hit the deer, killed the deer, and obviously didn't end up finishing the race and therefore not winning the event. So have you had anything like that where you've been driving along and all of a sudden, you know, there's a bloody great cow on the road or something like that?
Nudists, something like that.
So I've got a couple of stories. In Cyprus, there was dogs, because obviously dogs are quite wild out there. So we had dogs on the track, and I'm such an animal person. So obviously I am fully prepared to lose a championship if it means that I get to save a dog. So, you know, that's one of the things.
That's where your veterinary training might come in.
Exactly. I've also had some moons on the stage as well. I've had some like Czech Republic fans with like "I love you, Catie" signs, and then them all like bearing all when I'm driving down the road.
Not on.
It's funny though. It is funny, isn't it? I mean, you have to. I always think, you know, what's the point in doing it if you're not going to have fun? It's a sport at the end of the day. We're not saving lives, so I always say, oh, you've got to see the lightheartedness and everything.
Yeah.
In a great big bare ass on the side of the track. Yeah, lovely.
It's funny when you get something on the camera as well, isn't it?
Hey, let's talk about stages. Where is the best place that you've raced, and why?
That's such a tough one. I loved Cyprus because it was like the desert, you know, it was completely barren. Me and my co-driver stumbled across an army training zone that we didn't even know we were in when we were doing some pace note practice. So we got escorted out by the army.
Really?
I think, yeah, that was quirky. I did love Cyprus.
What is your favorite surface on which to race?
Oh, probably gravel, definitely.
Why?
Big slides. It's a lot more forgiving than tarmac. And tarmac, it can be quite scary. If you miss the braking zone, you're kind of, you know, it's going to be nasty. But on gravel, you can flick it in with a handbrake. There's a lot of ways that you can save it technically. So I think probably gravel's my favorite.
Have you done much drifting, Catie? Like specific drifting?
No, I haven't actually. I never have. And it's quite funny because a lot of people that don't know what rally is think I'm a drift racer as well. So I've never dabbled in that.
But there's got to be similar skills because you do certain corners, you do drift using handbrake turns and keeping the nose in and the tail out all the way around the corner, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think probably my auto testing background as well came, you know, that was probably the closest relation to drifting. Yeah, I mean, I probably do it, you know, not seriously in competition, but a lot for fun most of the time.
Who, apart from your dad, has been the biggest influence on your career?
Oh, that's so tough.
You know, whether it's somebody you've looked up to or literally somebody that's actually guided you and helped you and given you advice.
I think probably co-drivers. Actually, I wouldn't be able to pick one. I think Anna and Veronica were both very influential. Anna was there when I first started my career, and she gave me a lot of advice, a lot of tuition, because she'd sat with quick drivers, so she knew where the pace was at. And then Veronica bringing in Petter Solberg and their kind of experience, that was really invaluable for me to get to the fine-tuned pace notes and develop it from that side. I think it's somebody that's consistently there with you and isn't just looking at a snapshot of your bad day. I think that's what really makes quite a big influence in your overall career.
Were there many female role models in the sport for you when you first started getting into it, when you were first aware of what you wanted to do in terms of driving?
No, they weren't, not kind of actively competing at that time. Obviously, Michelle Mouton's been a massive influence to me when I was sort of growing up, and she still is. She's been at some of the events as safety delegate, so I've met her before. She's still, I think what she does is awesome, and she's definitely someone that I aspire to be like. You know, she was pitching it with the boys as well. And I think probably when I first started out, I was working quite close with Susie Wolf as well, and her Dare to Be Different campaign. So I got a lot of, she phoned me up on a Friday night from her home in Switzerland and asked me how I'm doing, and you know, and she'd give me some advice. We had the same manager when I first started out in motorsport as well, so that was quite a nice correlation there. But yeah, I think actively in motorsport, no, there wasn't. So I was quite amazed when I first started how even when I was a beginner, I became quite, I used to get a lot of messages from kind of people that were starting out, females that were starting out, coming to me for advice. Yeah. And I was like, oh, I'm just making it up as I go. I don't really know.
I laugh because I relate. Yeah, definitely.
Oh, making it up as we go along.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, very much so. Yeah.
God.
Yeah, no, it's fully scripted. Yeah. To wrap up the bulk of the interview, because we're going to go quick fire crazy in a moment. What's the ultimate goal within sport, within life, eventually presenting? What is next for you? Forgetting the lockdown craziness at the moment, where's that dream taking you?
That dream is to be consistently, I mean, we all know in motorsport how difficult it is, especially budgets is the hardest part for me to raise. Yeah. I'd say to be able to be consistently competing, to be able to be testing, to be able to be getting the same amount of kilometers that my competitors get, you know, a fresh set of tyres at every round. I've never had that. I've always been running on my teammates' second-hand tyres because we weren't able to, you know, buy the new tyres and stuff. So to have a clean slate and to have a few years where I can properly attack it, that's where I want to be able to give me the best chance of moving up the ranks in the WRC. And I want to be there pitching it with the boys as well. That's one of my biggest ambitions.
Equal playing field, basically, to give you the best crack at it. Yeah.
Which sounds crazy to people that don't follow motorsport, but anyone in motorsport knows that is not the case at all most of the time.
Yeah.
Well, I can see it in 10, 15 years, Catie being, you know, obviously getting there, and future Top Gear presenter right in front of me. I can see it now. After a successful World Rally career, going on to do that, and then I should be in my slippers with my pipe, even though I don't smoke.
Yeah, just you'll have a pipe anyway, just for this.
Yeah, exactly that. And they just like, I remember interviewing Catie several years back, and now she's
basically claiming all that success from this moment in time. Yes, we started right here with us.
Yeah, that's what's going to happen. There you go. You're gonna be a big star. I'm sure of that.
Catie, sure he is, mate. Sure he is. Hey, you know what we didn't talk about? Bikes, motorbikes.
Yeah.
I don't know why we didn't, because that is Jeff's thing, and it's
we've got enough.
It's my thing. It's my thing in a very bad and
Matthew,
all right.
It's not your thing. You think it's your thing, but it's not your thing.
All right, leave me alone. How much bike riding have you done? Because I know, obviously, we met on the Harley stand at Motorcycle Live because you had a Harley little bit, which you obviously enjoyed as much as I enjoyed riding around on mine. What sort of bike riding had you done over the past few years? Have you always ridden bikes off-road, on-road?
I actually, I haven't really, considering I quad bikes a lot of. My dad had a trials bike, which I've played on, but he was quite protective over that. And then actually it was last year in the winter, me and my sister said, I said I want to have a go, because a lot of people have recommended that motocross to me for training for rally, because it's judging grip, it's fitness, you know, all those kind of things.
Yeah.
So I jumped on, had a great time. Hannah, my sister, came out, who's much more not kind of motorsport or competition orientated, and she ended up seizing the engine. She went full throttle, really dug into the mud, you know, and that was it really. So we haven't played trials bike since then. So then my first kind of experience was with Harley. And yeah, I mean, I'm looking around at the weather right now and wishing I was out riding, but I'm sure there'll be some beach trips planned when we can get back out on it.
Yes, what we're doing, Jeff, is we're gonna cruise over on bikes to Catie's place. Me and a Harley, you on some sort of Kawasaki or something. Oh, you even still haven't got your road license yet, so we can't do it.
Well,
this guy's a pro motocrosser, still hasn't got his road license.
Well, I'm too worried about going on the road because, you know, there's these crazy rally drivers that come around the corner and spin. You know, you're not even safe in a bus.
Well, that is it, actually. To be fair, I am such a gentle rider, it has to be said. Yeah, I'm definitely not one for speed on motorbikes.
I get that. That's the same. I'm the same with the road, you see. So I get the kicks off the road, and then you go on the road and you see the dangers. So you're kind of like, that's. But I will. I was only speaking about this the other day, Matt. I am going to
get your license.
Yes, and get my license, and then we can go and tour.
We'll be two hairy bikers of a different sort.
Yeah. Well, you, not me. Yeah.
I know. I was being kind. Okay, Catie, thank you so much for joining us. That is the bulk of the interview done, the main part. Before you go, I've got two boys who would like to say hello. So, gonna go and get the boys.
I'm still.
Can you please hello? Boys, this is Catie from Catie's Amazing Machines.
Hi, what are your names?
Kit and Jasper.
Ah, how are you? Are you enjoying yourself in the sun?
Yeah.
Yes. Have you got anything else you might like to say? Hey, boys, can you show Katie which way it is to the beach?
Smooth.
Yeah, that will do.
Have you been teaching them that, Matt?
No, not at all. They're just yes.
Yes, absolutely would have been doing that.
Should we do the other one? Should we go, sup, girlfriend? There we go. Right.
Amazing.
I can see.
There's a lot of good home learning going on.
I was going to say, lockdown's been very productive for you, hasn't it?
Right. You guys go off. We're going to go prepare for a bike ride. Say bye-bye to Katie and Jeff.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Good to meet you.
Go on, make a nuisance elsewhere. Go on, shut the door on your way out. Go on, I'll be pop. Right, we're good. Okay, now we can sign on the show. Ladies, buddy. And we're there.
Good stuff.
Thank you, Katie, so much for taking time out. Sorry about the break in the middle of things. And what have you got planned for the rest of your weekend?
Rest of my weekend, I haven't got a lot of planned, to be honest with you. I will do some training. That's not a white lie. I do need to do some bit of gardening as well. Being outside in the sunshine. Yeah, not a lot on, but lucky the most at the minute, so making the most of it.
Rabbit whispering is what.
Rabbit whispering.
Yeah, I do want to save this little guy, so I'll get on with that this afternoon.
Okay, back to veterinary, Katie, for this afternoon. Hey, take care of yourselves. We'll be seeing you on motorbike somewhere, skydiving somewhere, and wake surfing somewhere. And of course, best of luck when you do get back into it. Hopefully we'll speak to you at the other end. Maybe a follow-up after you get going with, is it your first year on the Junior World Rally this year?
Yeah.
Okay, so good luck with the rest of that. We hope that kicks off for you very shortly, as quick as can be. And enjoy the beautiful garden state of England. Is that what it's called?
Yes, indeed.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me on, guys. Take care.
It's been a pleasure. Take care.
Bye-bye.
See you later.
So that's our 7th show done with Catie Munnings. Thank you very much to her. Well done to you, Jeffro, for battling on through despite your VE Day hangover.
I'm starting to be fair, I am starting to come back to some kind of normality. Just a light headache now.
Are the VE celebrations going to be carrying on throughout the weekend?
I can see that happening, yeah, because we were given a nice bottle of red wine by one of the neighbours, and it would seem,
very rude.
I don't want to keep that for a special occasion, so I might just cork that open tonight. And
the special occasion is as and when you make it, Jeff, which I'm assuming is going to be soon after. Oh, it's after 12 o'clock, so you're fine.
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Hey, people, thank you for watching episode 7 of the Crowfro Show with myself, Matt Crowhurst, and
me, Jeffro.
Make sure you hit subscribe, you hit the thumbs up, drop us a comment. Who might you like to talk to in the world of action sports? That we should post that on social media, shouldn't we?
Yes, let us know, and then we'll see if we can get it sorted.
Yeah, it'd be good. I mean, by hook or by crook, we do know most people potentially.
We do. Yeah, I think we could. Well, we've managed to get some good guests so far. Obviously, Johnny Ray.
Any bigger than the goat?
No, and Ricky. Yep. So let's keep it going. Try and see some of these other people on here.
Thank you for joining us, people. We'll see you on the next episode. As and when that will be, we don't know, but they're coming in thick and fast. You take care of yourselves in the meantime. Stay home, stay safe, and don't drink as much as Jeff.
No, I will rein it back in when life gets back to normal. Just, it's just, I'm on holiday.
You are.
Forced holiday.
We're on the 8th week of holiday coming up. Later, Jeffrey. Have an amazing weekend.
Right. You too.
Me do my 2-step.